Yes, good morning. So my name is Eddie Travia. I'm the co-founder and chief startup officer of Seedcoin. Seedcoin is a seed stage global Bitcoin startup incubator. We call it a virtual incubator. I will explain this a little bit further through the presentation. I use the word, new funding paradigm, referring back, I don't know, many of you may remember paradigm shift from the internet years, and I purposely use this word a little bit as a reference as well to the internet years, where change of paradigm was a very common expression used in many presentations. So a quick introduction about myself. So I'm from originally from France. I've been 10 years in China, and I studied business. I worked in private equity, venture capital in China and emerging markets. And I have some experience with high-tech entrepreneurs, as I was in charge of an MBA program with a lot of tech guys, international tech guys back in a major European technology park. My business partner, Hakim Mamoni, who is not here with us, is actually based in London. Introduced me to Bitcoin late 2012. But it took me some time to realize, let's say, the disruptive power of this decentralized currency. And then with another partner who's here, Alexis Nicosia in Singapore, we decided to create Seedcoin and be able to invest and at the same time help Bitcoin startups to develop. We organized the first Bitcoin conference in Asia. Some of you may remember here in the room. And that was last November. So I wanted to speak about the investments and in crypto startups. So by crypto startups, I would say mainly Bitcoin startups for now, but of course there are some new altcoins, as Rodolfo was explaining. So cryptocurrency as a whole and the startups involved in that space. So as you can see, there has been a great increase in both the number of deals and the amount of money invested in Bitcoin startups. It is quite impressive. At the same time, I would say not so surprising when you saw both, I would say, the Bitcoin price increase and the general interest increase by the investment community in that space. Of course, if you compare these numbers to high-tech startups in general, let's say it's not yet that impressive, but the increase, the pace of the increase of the interest can be seen here with, let's say, for the first quarter of this year, more money spent already than almost the last 2 quarters of 2013. So it's quite it shows a trend that reflects the interest by the VC community in this space. So here is just a few names of companies and a few names of companies that have been invested recently. And it shows a little bit the diversity already of the crypto startup ecosystem. Because you don't have to invest only, let's say, in exchanges. Sometimes exchanges are the most common form, let's say, of businesses that people may know about Bitcoin, but there are also, of course, payment processors. There are Bitcoin ATMs, P2P lending platform. So it's already a very diverse and ecosystem. Now, I want to talk to you about the new funding solutions. This means that the first slide was mentioning let's say, the traditional, the VC, the private equity investments, the angel investments into this space. But there are new funding solutions in which I will explain a little bit later. But what are the origins of this funding solution? So there are social origins in a way, in the sense that, for example, the trust in banks has been quite affected, as we all know, by the economic crisis, the financial crisis in 2008, and since then, the consumer trust in banks has gone down. So that's one of the origins of the new funding solutions. the fact that people don't necessarily want to get money funding from banks. There are also some legal origins in the sense that it's not so easy to work with the incumbent, what I call the incumbent licensed entities. So for example, the companies that enable the funding, the traditional funding, or for example, the traditional issuance of stocks and shares in the market. There is also a high cost of traditional funding, as we all know. Doing an IPO or listing, issuing shares is not a cheap process. And there is also right now a historical law of lending to small and medium enterprises and individuals. So, for example, these numbers are from the UK, the Bank of England. They are very recent numbers, and they show that the growth of lending is actually a negative growth. So basically, still in the UK, since 2008, as you can see, there has been a negative growth of bank lending to businesses. And that's quite important because SMEs are job creators in all economies. And when the banks stop lending to SMEs, it usually reflects a poor or a degraded economic situation. So I just wanted to show you the record-breaking Bitcoin performance in 2013. As you know, Bitcoin price has gone down since then. As Bobby Lee was explaining, for example, in China, there has been a negative effect of the price from, let's say, the Chinese decisions regarding Bitcoin. That's one of the reasons, we guess. But it also shows that the value of Bitcoin has been very close to the value of gold back in December 2013. Now, what are the challenges that crypto startups face? So, of course, they face, the entrepreneurs in that space, they face the same challenges as their peers in other high-tech startups. It's a fast-growing and competitive environment, and but it has also specific challenges. So, for example, there is a high degree of uncertainty in the regulatory space. This comes from the fact that when you're dealing with something like a currency, or when you're dealing in a fintech world, you have to be, you are facing very complex regulatory issues. And at the same time, the fact that Bitcoin is not yet well understood by, for example, the tax authorities, or in the US, FinCEN, IRS, etc., it means that each of these institutions may have a different view on Bitcoin, which is actually the case in the US and in other countries. So basically, the entrepreneurs have to face different institutions, each of them with their own definitions of Bitcoin or digital decentralized currency, maybe, and they have to adapt to each and to follow the rules and the laws of each organization they face. It's also quite complex to secure banking partners. This seems to have been like a roller coaster almost, because as you may know, entrepreneurs have been able to bank with certain banks, then they had their accounts closed for various reasons, and now they have to find new banks, for example, to work with. It's really a complex issue. Licensing is also, depending, for example, if you're in the US and you want to be you need a money transmitter license as an exchange, as a Bitcoin exchange. You would need one license per state, for example. So that's a big issue, and also that's a big cost. And of course, they have to face Bitcoin rate volatility, which may or may not be an issue depending on the sector in which they're working. But it definitely is an issue if you are, for example, funded in Bitcoin, or most of your revenues in Bitcoin, and you have expenses in fiat, for example. Now, what are the opportunities? Well, for certain sectors of the crypto startups, there are low capital requirements. So basically, for some of these companies, it's a little bit like any other high-tech startup. You can start with, a computer, server, tech people. You assemble a team and you start your project. That's not always true. As I was saying, for example, if you're doing an exchange in a highly regulated place like the US, then you need um, to pay, for example, for compliance or for lawyers for the licensing process, which is quite expensive. Now there is the opportunity also is a high disruptive impact you can have on a market. I mean, it's not every day that you can actually go into a space like financial technology, for example, where you are really disrupting a sector that has been traditionally very expensive to enter, where there have been traditionally very high barriers to entry. So I'm just referring to the first mover advantage of companies like Coinbase, BitPay, blockchain, etc., which today have many competitors, but as we have seen, they have been funded early and they have gained critical client base. So what are these new funding solutions that I referred to in this slide? So that's an example of a new funding solution. For the Bitcoin world, you have a strong community sense, and one reflection of this strong community sense is the fact that you can, collectively gather people interested in one common cause. So, for example, that, if we call that a cause, but let's say more of an entertainment maybe, but it's the support of a NASCAR car. So it shows that the power of the network, for example, a Bitcoin talk or Reddit, this actually is from the Reddit Dogecoin thread. They managed to, I think at the time I was reading this, it was 68 million Dogecoin, and they managed to send that and have one driver use this and be able to run in NASCAR thanks to this amount. Now I'm showing here a few new companies, or what you could call funding platforms. So actually my interest in Bitcoin just came at the same time I was looking at the crowdfunding platforms. So for example, crowdfunding, as you know, is quite a recent development in the world of funding. In the UK, I refer to Bank to the Future, which is a Bitcoin accepting crowdfunding platform. There is also a Bitcoin accepting startup stock exchange, which is actually based out of Curacao and regulated by the Dutch Caribbean Securities Exchange. Havelock Investments. Havelock Investments is based in Panama. It's a platform we have used to list and to get funded. And there is a Bitcoin startup, for example, which is an example of a Bitcoin, originally Bitcoin crowdfunding platform. Then there are the blockchain-based solutions like Mastercoin, which has been very successful, both in raising funds for Mastercoin itself and recently for MadeSafe, the SafeCoin. There is Ethereum, which is another, which is their own blockchain, but they will also apply, let's say, for a different kind of funding. Counterparty, which is also which has used what we call proof of burn. Proof of burn means that you send your Bitcoin to a specific address, and in exchange of the Bitcoin you get a new coin, for, in this case, XCP, counterparty coins. And there is a recent one, Coin Prism, which is using Color Coin. Aaron, you will recognize your video slide, so I give you credit orally. Colored Coin is a blockchain-based solution whereby you can issue assets or shares, and Coin Prism is providing a platform so that you can actually issue shares through Coral Coin. It's started by a Frenchman named Flavien, with whom we have been speaking for a few months now. So a quick word on Seedcoin. So Seedcoin is this seed-stage global virtual incubator, which we launched in summer of 2013. The idea was that Bitcoin doesn't have, for the moment, a central location where most startups are located and are working together. So the idea was not to do a traditional incubator with gathering 10, 15 startups in one room, in one office building. We decided that the virtual incubator model was a better approach. Like this, we can work with companies, entrepreneurs all around the world. So my partners and the 7 startups we have been incubating till now, which I will come back here. So, for example, Dealcoin, this is our partner's company, Hakim Mamoni's company. It's an in-person Bitcoin exchange, and we raised for that 500 Bitcoin in 6 minutes. This was last September. So this is an example of a new funding solution that entrepreneurs have the access to today, basically. These are the startups that we incubate at Sitcoin. So we have CoinSimple, which is an aggregator of payment processors, and make it very simple for merchants to accept Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. Hive, which is a very secure and very, let's say, its user interface is very easy to use. It's a wallet, it's a Bitcoin wallet. MEXBT is, we hope, is going to be very soon the main exchange in Mexico, launching in a few weeks, and already doing a lot of OTC trading, the highest volume of OTC trading in Mexico at the moment. CryptoPay is a payment processor based in the UK, on which you can actually buy Bitcoin now in the UK in pounds. BTC.SX is a derivative platform which has brokered more than $45 million of transactions. And ZSIM is a mobile tech startup. So these are some examples of the startups we work with. Now, just to conclude on the new funding solutions. First of all, we believe that the new funding solutions should trigger new regulations, like the Jobs Act, for example, which is affecting the crowdfunding and let's say the retail investor funding in the US. And of course, it should also create new compliance techniques. When I mean new compliance techniques, I mean compliance techniques which are easier to deal with and less costly for entrepreneurs. The new funding solutions, of course, use new channels. As we saw for the Dogecoin NASCAR, they use channels like the social media, reputation-based social networks. So my belief and the message here is that entrepreneurs should take advantage of these new funding solutions beyond traditional VCs or angel investments, and also should consider to get funding in cryptocurrencies. I may not have explicitly explained this, but we raise funds in Bitcoin and we invest Bitcoin for the startups. So basically it's a full Bitcoin investment platform. Also, as a whole, let's say practice, success and failure of these projects will make the whole ecosystem more efficient in the long term, and hopefully will help develop more startups in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? What segments of the ecosystem are you finding most interesting for investment opportunities right now?
So right now we're looking at new services. We started with what could be referred to as the infrastructure of the Bitcoin startup ecosystem. So we were investing in exchanges, in wallets, and now what seems to be very interesting is the new services that build on top of these platforms.
You mean things like CoinDesk or ZeroBlock or something other than that?
Yes, we're looking right now, so we're looking at, let's say, the second batch of startups. So we're talking to companies, for example, that are exploring the blockchain, data mining the blockchain, and feeding this information to the market for example, better trading, or for knowing what is going on in terms of transaction on the blockchain and how that helps. So it's almost like market data in a way.
Okay, so not media.
Yes, we're also looking at media. There is one company we are supporting in the UK called BitNews. It's a media platform with the very the focus is that they're going to only talk about cryptocurrencies and let's say avoiding the bias or the control that you may see in the media in other traditional media outlets. So we're looking at media, we're looking at market data, we're looking at market making, which is part of the trading ecosystem in Bitcoin.
Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Alexander from CoinPip. One question I have for you is, since you're based in HK, HKCX was recently revealed as a scam. And I'm wondering what are the issues you face for crowdfunding these startups when the legislation, when it's not quite clear how the funding is being channeled and where it's going to, and the normal mechanisms of verifying that you have a security in a startup may not necessarily be there for a Bitcoin startup.
Yeah, so it's true that hopefully these new funding solutions are going to bring more transparency to the system. Unfortunately, I've been in China for 10 years, and in the Bitcoin, and also not only in the Bitcoin world, I've seen a few scams out there. I think, of course, people have to take their own judgment, but as a way to protect, if there is a regulatory environment that could protect for this, that's fine. But I would say in general, if we can bring more transparency to the funding solution itself, in the way maybe it's approached. So for example, for us, when we raised Bitcoin for these startups, we explained how many Bitcoins will go to each startup, and if anybody asks me, and I receive email very often about the process, I explain how we work. But I'm always wary, of course, of the, in Hong Kong we had other problems with companies pretending to be in one of the top, buildings in Hong Kong, and extremely expensive office space in the Bitcoin world, and then it turns out, of course, that fortunately it was all kind of fake or deliberately pretending to be there. So I think yes, we hopefully these new funding solutions will bring transparency to the whole investment process.
Thank you.
Thank you.